Good morning. I'm John Lentz, the editorial director at City and State. I'll be moderating today's discussion, which centers on data matching. This program is sponsored by AARP New York. What I mean by data matching here is how low and moderate income older New Yorkers are missing out on benefits they qualify for, whether it's due to a lack of coordination among state agencies that administer various benefits programs, a lack of awareness among individuals, complicated, confusing, and technologically challenging application processes, and stigma. We'll be discussing these factors in greater detail, as well as the impact, millions of dollars lost in government aid, and what can be done to improve things. We may have time to hit on a few related issues as well, and we'll try to take a few audience questions as time permits. If you're out there in the audience, you can select the question tab and pose your questions there. Anything that comes through on the chat, we encourage you to discuss things on the chat, but we may not see those to get those in the queue for audience questions. Before I introduce the panel today and get the discussion going, let's hear from David McNally, AARP New York's Director of Government Affairs and Advocacy, who will offer brief opening remarks. David?
Thank you, John, and thanks to City and State for hosting this webinar, and thanks to all of you for participating. New York State faces a $4.4 billion question. Why are the state and its neediest older adults missing out on major federal assistance? AARP New York recently contributed to and endorsed a report by the New York School's Schwartz Center for Economic Policy Analysis that found data matching could help older New Yorkers receive at least $2.5 billion annually in assistance they qualify for, while at the same time driving an estimated $4.4 billion in economic stimulus to communities around the state. State agencies are not ensuring that our older residents are enrolled in key benefits programs they qualify for. This could be rectified by using data matching. Briefly, using computer systems to identify benefit programs participants are eligible for and ensure they're enrolled in other benefit programs for which they qualify. So why is it that so many qualifying older New Yorkers are not enrolled in supplemental nutrition assistance, home energy assistance, the Medicare savings program, and utility companies' own energy assistance programs? Because these programs have confusing and burdensome application processes. There's a stigma around receiving public assistance, and many people, particularly older New Yorkers, have difficulty navigating the technology required to enroll. You may be thinking, this has been going on forever. What's new? Well, what's new is the state's 65 and over population and their poverty rate are skyrocketing, according to a recent analysis by the Center for Urban Future. That analysis said there are now more people over 65 than under 15 in the Empire State. This means the universe of older New Yorkers who qualify for but are not receiving the benefits for which they are entitled is also skyrocketing. In her State of the State message this year, Governor Hochul proposed the key agencies match on participants of benefits programs for children and families. The programs I mentioned earlier, HEAP, SNAP, Medicare savings, utility energy assistance programs, all have similar income eligibility guidelines. So matching data and enrolling New Yorkers in those programs makes eminent sense. AARP New York asks, if the governor can data match for programs for children and families, why not for older New Yorkers as well? That's what we'll delve into today. And I want to thank the 4 other organizations that also contributed to and endorsed the New School report: the Food Research and Action Center, known as FRAC, Hunger Free America, the Medicare Rights Center, and the Public Utility Law Project. So again, thanks to City and State, thanks to Senator Prasad and Assemblymember Davila, thanks to our collaborators on the report, thanks to you for tuning in, and without further ado, I'll turn it back to John.
Great, thank you, David. And if you or someone else at AARP could find a link to that report that's come up in the chat.
Sure, I'll put it in the chat.
Great, thank you. Let's now bring up our panel. Our panelists can go and come off on video at the moment. And I'll introduce everyone and we'll get started with our questions. We have today State Senator Roxanne Prasad, who chairs the State Senate Committee on Social Services, post she's held for a few years now. We also have Assemblymember Maritza Davila, who as of this year became chair of the Committee on Social Services in her house. We have Joel Berg, CEO of Hunger Free America. Lori Wheelock, Executive Director and Counsel of the Public Utility Law Project of New York. Beth Scheiken Rothbart, Senior Counsel for Client Services and New York Policy at the Medicare Rights Center. And of course, Beth Finkel, State Director of AARP New York. Welcome, everyone. Now I'll go ahead and jump right in with our first question, and we'll go in that order that I introduced everyone. New York has numerous programs that help older persons and all New Yorkers in need. Do you think the agencies that administer these programs make enough effort to coordinate their efforts to enroll eligible New Yorkers? And Senator Prasad, let's start with you.
So good morning, everyone, and thank you, City and State and AARP for hosting us this morning. The agencies do make every effort, and we also coordinate with them to make every effort to ensure that New Yorkers have the access to apply for programs. Can we do better? Absolutely. And that is what we're striving for. I'm here to partner with everyone because we want to ensure that all New Yorkers who are eligible for aid from the federal government or the state has access to do so. And again, we are making every possible effort. It is not an easy task. I appreciate everyone in everything that they're doing, but we are going to continue to fight to ensure that everyone who can apply will have access to do so.
Great, thank you, Senator. Over to the Assembly member.
I concur with the senator, but I also would like to add. Well, by the way, thank you, John. Thank you, David, for hosting us today. I really appreciate it. I may be new to the as the chair of social services, but I've been in the social service business for over 27 years. And I have seen the disparities of, and the inadequacies that we have in our systems. Can we do better? Absolutely. Do we need to do better? Absolutely. I'm almost getting there, John. I'm almost a senior citizen, and I want to be treated with dignity and respect. And we need to do that. We need to start now.
Great. Thank you, Senator. Over to Joel Berg.
The short answer is no. Imagine that you have an uncle that has even more money than Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates combined. Well, you do. He's called Uncle Sam. And the fact that we're having a knockdown, drag-out fight between the governor and the Senate and the Assembly on what to cut, what to fund, what to raise taxes on the wealthiest to pay for, and spending state funds to fight hunger, including among older New Yorkers, where there's an unlimited pot of SNAP dollars, food stamps dollars, especially because it's an entitlement program that's going untapped, really makes no sense at all. I worked for USDA in the 90s, and the time you could file your taxes online, but not apply for food stamps. It became SNAP. And I asked the head of the program why that is. And they said, well, it's easier to file your taxes than to apply for SNAP. SNAP is a more complicated program. That is insane. And many model programs have the same application questions on them, require the same documents. So it's really a missed opportunity that the state is taking years and years and years to do something that should have been done years ago.
Great. Thank you, Joel. Let's go over to Lori Wheelock.
Thank you, John. And again, thank you everyone for having me. I work for the Public Utility Law Project. Again, my name is Lori Wheelock. I go by she, hers pronouns, and our whole world is utilities. But when people call us, they're not just calling us about their utilities. And that has become so apparent because of the pandemic. We have people who we help with the emergency, right? They're worried that they're going to have their electric or gas shut off. They're unsure how they're going to be paying their water bill. But then when we get them through that emergency, they're saying, okay, well, can you help me with my SNAP benefits? And what about housing? I'm facing eviction or foreclosure. And so we've been really fortunate during the pandemic to be able to network with many other agencies because we can do virtual a lot. and do wraparound services. And I'm going to come in from the hopeful place. I think a lot of this is coordination and communication, right? In the energy field, we have clean energy hubs now from NYSERDA. So what Pulp has been doing is once we got people through that emergency, we get them right over to their local group who can help them with energy efficiency, how to manage their bills, how to lower their consumption, because every dollar they save means that they can put it somewhere else. And so I'm really excited about this discussion today. I think we're going to be able to come up with a really great roadmap for the state. So thank you, John.
Great, thank you, Lori. And let's go to Beth Scheiken-Rothbart.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of this panel today. I think in terms of whether the agencies do enough to coordinate this, they make an effort, but is it enough? You know, for example, Social Security, when a person applies for their extra help benefit, the low-income subsidy, the Social Security is required to send that information over to the local departments of social services. And what we see happen is people will receive a Medicare Savings Program application in the mail. Nothing's pre-populated, and it's just an application. So there's, you know, effort being made, but it seems like there's a lot more that we can do to really simplify and better coordinate.
Great, thank you. And let's go with Beth Finkel at AARP New York.
So I want to re-stress what David was talking about before. What we know is that there are $2.5 billion sitting in the federal government that belongs in the pockets of older New Yorkers who need it the most. In fact, we recently did a demographic study with the Center for Urban Future and found out that the 65 plus population has increased by 31% in the last decade, and it's 3.5 million people are 65 plus in New York State right now. But here's the part that's most upsetting. 1 in 8 of older New Yorkers 65 plus are living in poverty now, 1 in 8. So we have this population that in these inflationary times where they're struggling to put food on the table and they're struggling to pay for utilities and their health care, it just is unconscionable that we're not quickly coordinating and getting people connected to the benefits that they are entitled to. And by the way, that we all have wanted the federal government to provide. We're all really happy the federal government provides these funds, and yet New York State is not tapping into them sufficiently. Just on that Medicare Savings Program alone, you know, we're talking about 300,000 New Yorkers who are now eligible, who are 65 plus, who are not getting it. Those people could be getting approximately $165 a month back in their Social Security check every month. Can you imagine what a difference it would make to putting food on the table in those households? So we are really gung-ho about this, because in 2023, we shouldn't be talking about these. Otherwise, you know, maybe we need to get AI in here and take it over for us.
Great, thank you, Beth. On to our next question, we'll go back to the senator. New York may not be maximizing enrollment in key assistance programs for New York's low and moderate income older residents who are eligible for much needed services that are paid for by the federal government. Advocates say if state agencies coordinated and established a data matching program, it would help people in need and stimulate the state economy. Is this data matching initiative something the legislature will get behind? Senator Prasad.
So, you know, something that we will get behind. First, I'll start by saying Senator Parker has legislation that's starting that process. But in terms of, for example, for SNAP, there are federal regulations that prohibit the sharing of information. So we have to make sure we work with our federal partners in terms of how the information can be shared. We all want to ensure that we're sharing the information and making the process as seamless as possible. I think that's the goal that we have. Joel will never agree with us on, you know, when we're saying these things, but that's the aim that we have. We want to make sure it's as seamless as possible. A senior should be able to go to X office and say, I want to apply for whatever benefits I'm eligible for. That's the ultimate goal. But right now, there are rules and regulations that prohibit us from doing that. And we're working with our federal partners to see how can we change that. And, you know, and we've started that at a state level, and we will continue to do so. But it's not something that we can say, snap our finger tomorrow and we can flip the switch and do it. We cannot. It's a process that requires cooperation with the federal government and the state government saying, okay, we will follow what the federal government allows us to do.
A couple of quick follow-ups there. You mentioned legislation from Kevin Parker. Any further details on what that would do, or have you read up on
That's
that?
on sharing information on utilities when someone files, they're receiving the benefits for utility, that they share it, and so they will find out what else is the person eligible for the utilities fund. And that's a great step forward, because we saw what happened during the pandemic when our seniors were unable, to pay for utilities and all of that. And all of these things came in handy, and we are trying to do more of that.
Got it. And the federal aspect of this is interesting. You can only do so much there in Albany. Are you aware of any significant efforts in Congress at the federal level to change some of these things? Would it have to be federal legislation? Could there be agency level regulatory changes? What would you need to see change? And have you heard of any efforts to?
In terms of the social service benefits, particularly in SNAP and all of that, we've been speaking with, for example, Senator Gillibrand, Congressman Grace Meng, all of them, trying to get them to work with us, and they have done that. And there's some things that Senator Gillibrand is working with to get into the Farm Bill. So, to change something. So we are it's not, the public may not see what we're doing, but behind the scenes, we are doing a lot, because again, Assemblymember Davila and our mission is to ensure that everyone across the state of New York who is eligible for social service benefits is able to receive it and does not have to jump through hoops and hurdles to be able to get it.
Got it. Thank you, Senator. Let's go to Assemblymember Davila again. Is this data matching initiative something the state legislature will get behind in your view?
Well, I just want to make sure that I word this correctly. I agree that there's a Privacy Act that we do not have control over. The federal government has the power to kind of make amendments, right, to be able to share the information. Furthermore, I believe that we need to start thinking about income qualifications at this point, because of the fact that, seniors now, let's say seniors that have worked their whole lives are retiring now, that a certain income bracket that do not qualify for these things. So we need to take a look at that. Can these seniors be able to maximize their eligibility by lowering the AMI, because of the fact that a lot of them that are aging out now, that are going into the system, that are getting their pensions and their Social Security, may have a problem. But what we're not looking at is the way the economy is going right now. So now we're seeing a huge number of seniors that are practically starving to death because of the fact that they have to pay $2,500 of rent because they don't qualify. They don't even build enough senior housing for people that are kind of at that point where they have maybe $10 more on their income and they do not qualify. So we have to start thinking about all of these things. And, as the chair, I will make a commitment to be able to help us come along so that we could get to that point. But we have so many other issues that we need to talk about before we get there. I will be working with Senator Roxanne Prasad to ensure that we do not skip a beat, so to speak. So yes, I will get behind anything that will help not only my seniors, but New York State seniors get what's due to them. So, yes.
Got it. Thank you, Senator. Let's go to Beth Finkel from AARP.
Yeah, I just want to say that I know the question was posed what the legislature can do here, but I just want to go back to what the governor said in her State of the State and what work she's doing right now to do data matching for family and children. So obviously, somewhere in the administration, there's an understanding about the barriers that Roxanne Prasad mentioned, and yet the administration has figured out a way to do that with family and children. And I think that's where we want to come back to, which is that if it can be done for family and children now, we believe it should be done for the 65, because just like the assembly member just said, in these inflationary times, we have to do everything that we can right away. And we did ask the commissioner at OTDA, it was asked of him at some hearings, when this could be, since it's being done for family and children, when could this be done for older adults? And his answer was, it will be 3 years. And that was more related to technical issues than anything else. So I think we're saying, we're asking, the administration particularly, and of course, we love the support of the legislature at this point in time, to say, if you can figure out a way to do this for family and children, then we expect you to figure out a way to do it with older adults. And just one more point to this, ARP nationally works across all states, and they have been looking at this issue very carefully. And I think that there are some ways to nuance how these rules and regulations are, that we believe that it is possible to do it now. So I know this is kind of newer. Benefits Data Trust has come out with a whole report just in the last few weeks stating how this might be done. So I think we all have a will. I mean, I think we've heard that from everybody on the call, and I believe that we have a way. So I'm really excited that we've all come together to figure this out and move it forward, not in 3 years, but right now when people need food on their table, especially since we just hit that hunger cliff where the extra dollars in SNAP were eliminated. And now older adults, and Joel can speak more to this than I can, the older adults are getting somewhere around $25 a month now, and they were getting over $250 a month in SNAP. I mean, what a terrible blow to everybody's kitchen table. So.
Thank you, Beth. A quick follow-up for you, though, on that point, with what the governor called for in her State of the State and making customer experience and benefits participation a state priority and extending that to older New Yorkers. Is that primarily up to the administration? Does the state legislature need to be involved? Is it a budget question? Is it just kind of moving around dollars that the Hochul administration already has? How would that play out?
Is that to me, or
that's to you? Yeah. Or do you have a sense of like?
Yeah. If we would hope the administration would do it, but as our legislators know, and all of advocates know, administrations come and go. And what would be wonderful is if it's, in there, enacted into law. And so whoever the administration is, our legislature has made it very clear exactly how this is supposed to be in perpetuity. So that's how I would answer that.
Got it. Thank you, Beth. Let's go to Joel Berg again. We've hit on a few things here, with the data matching initiative. Would legislature get behind it? With the Hochul administration expand this to older New Yorkers sooner? Any other points you'd like to hit on, Joel? Over to you.
Yeah, I should say I worked for the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture in the federal government for 8 years. I think states sometimes narrowly interpret the Privacy Act. It's primarily intended to keep private data away from non-governmental entities, and there are fairly easy workarounds under existing federal law. As the senator put in the chat, there are federal regulations that say it can only be shared with individuals or parties directly connected with administration or enforcement of SNAP program. But I do note under federal law, not to get too wonkish, but if you're up 10 a.m. This morning, those things that you're probably wonks already, that technically federal law directs the states to manage the SNAP program, and then the states determine who within the state manages. So I would argue that legally the entire state has a responsibility for management of the SNAP program. So you could legally share within a state agency agencies. But even if that's not the interpretation, we also know that people can voluntarily waive this right. And we've done this in other projects. They could check off our form. Do you allow one state agency to share this with another? And most people will readily do that. I will point out there is a precedent when Christine Quinn was Speaker of the New York City Council. She did get the City of New York, the Human Resources Administration, which manages SNAP in New York City, to share a cross-match Medicaid data and SNAP data, and did enroll a lot of people around them. And just legislatively, Congressman Morelli and Senator Gillibrand do have a bill in Congress that we've been pushing to, number one, give pilot projects to states and localities and city and tribal governments to make online applications easier for a wide variety of benefits, and two, to help low-income people save for the future. And we're hopeful that there will be a state version of this bill shortly.
Got it. Thank you, Joel. Obviously, Medicare is one of those areas that's jointly run by the state and federal government. Beth Scheiken-Rothbart, let's go to you. Any of these points you'd want to respond to, and what, from your view, could be done at the state level on data matching?
I think that the Medicare savings program, I mean, it's a very under-enrolled benefit. It has been for a very long time. And here we now have expanded levels of eligibility for the Medicare savings program. And Beth Finkel mentioned there's now 300,000 more people who will now be eligible for it since the income level was increased in 2023. And it seems, we need to get the word out and get more people these benefits. And as Beth said, the Medicare Savings Program puts an additional $165 about back in everyone's pocket, in addition to assistance with prescription drugs. So annually, it's about $7,000 a person will get back. And so it just seems like if there's ways to coordinate and work with other programs to get that money back into older adults' pockets, we need to, take whatever steps are necessary.
Great, thank you. And let's go back to Lori Wheelock with the Public Utility Law Project. Broadly on data matching and what can be done in New York. But then if you have any thoughts on that Kevin Parker legislation that was mentioned as well. Over to you, Lori.
Yeah, thank you, John, and thank you, everyone. This discussion is just wonderful to be here. I love the wonkiness of it because this is what will get it done, right? We're just, so excited. It started with the governor's State of the State talking about, efficiencies and energy affordability. And then the one houses have come out. The Assembly is looking to codify the Energy Assistance Program. New York State has this goal that no low-income household should be spending more than 6% of their income on their energy bills. And that's an amazing target. The way that we're successful in doing that is through a low-income program. Each utility, Con Edison, National Grid, NYSEG, RG&E, they all have these low-income discount programs. And if you qualify for the Home Energy Assistance Program, HEAP, that's how you get enrolled into this low-income discount program. And it gives you anywhere from $15 to $22 off your bill every month. And that's how you get to that 6% energy burden. You get a credit, you get money off your bill, and that's how you're supposed to, meet that energy burden. And so the Assembly put in their one house, we support this program, we want to codify it, put it under the law, and they're looking to expand the eligibility. So right now it's about 60% state median income. They're looking to increase that to 80% area median income, which is huge. And so that conversation's happening. On the Senate side, Senator Parker's bill, which is carried in the Assembly by Assemblywoman Szilagyi on data matching between OTDA and the utilities, is in their one house. And that's fantastic because we see them as puzzle pieces, right? How do we get more people in this low-income discount program? We think data matching is the way, not only with OTDA and the utilities, but if the utilities can talk to one another, that'll be really powerful. Pulp has been going out since about August of last year and doing events all across the state, talking to people about their energy bills. And one of the things we're noticing is a lot of low-income people aren't already enrolled in this program because they haven't applied for HEAP, or they got denied. We had one woman in Syracuse who got denied from HEAP 3 times because she kept missing the phone interview. because she was working. And so there's so many stories out there and reasons why people aren't enrolled. If we can find these efficiencies and have these discussions, have these programs be put together, we're just going to increase the enrollment on the low income discount program. And then hopefully all that data can be shared with all the different programs people are talking about today, just easing the process for people, one program at a time.
Mhm. And again, Beth Finkel mentioned that Kathy Hochul talked about making improvements on this front. Is that a turning point? Were there efforts under the previous administration along these lines? If so, were there any that were success stories, or is this just a real pivot point in the state of New York? Anyone who wants to take that one?
I want to go back to what you said earlier about the customer service piece of this, John.
Sure.
And that the governor did speak about wanting New York to be, really first class in terms of consumer services. And she actually specifically called out the experience that people have when they're applying for benefits, because many of us know that it is not pleasant at all. And I am sure that both the senator and the assembly member can speak to this, that their constituency services do this work every single day, and just how challenging and how many barriers are thrown up for people who, really English might be their second language, but even if it's not, I mean, it's all of us, I know, struggle with different, well, I shouldn't say all of us, but most of us, including me, struggle with technology things all of the time. So we can only imagine, someone who's an older New Yorker might struggle even more. So I think that the governor really has hit on something, and I think that her administration is dedicated to this, but I think that they have not made the leap to prioritize older adults in this process right now. And that's I think the point of the administration. It's about prioritizing and saying, not only is it $2.5 billion that each individual senior is, if you put it in aggregate, should be getting, but that represents $4.4 billion economic stimulus to New York State. What locality doesn't want that extra economic stimulus? And let's face it, the folks who are getting, SNAP and MSP, they're not taking their money and putting it offshore somewhere. These are folks who get that extra money in their Social Security check, and they're down at the grocery store, the bodega, the dry cleaner, the pharmacy. They're spending that money locally in their local neighborhoods, which helps local businesses and everything else at the same time. So we really shouldn't lose sight of this. So yes, it's the right thing to do for consumers, but it's the fiduciary right thing for our government to be doing right away. So I think that's the connection point. And, I'm so happy about the family and children part, but why would you leave out a part of the population that needs it so desperately right now?
Well, Joel, let's go to you again. You bring some of that federal experience. I know you've been an advocate in New York for years. Do you see this as a turning point? Were there past efforts along these lines? Were there success stories? Were there failures? Are there lessons the Hochul administration can learn from and take from to make these kind of endeavors successful?
Well, there are lessons. As critical as I was of Michael Bloomberg's administration as mayor on many fronts, in technology, they did a good job. And we were one of the first places in the country where you can apply for SNAP with a smartphone and submit your applications. In the pandemic, technology was used very rapidly for good purposes. We were told for years and years, there's just no way under federal law that someone can apply for cash assistance TANF remotely. You have to go into an office. And yet magically within weeks of the pandemic, they found a legal, technologically feasible way to do it. We stopped vaccine information online within weeks. I'm old enough to remember when in New York, when I grew up in the suburbs in Rockland County, to get a driver's license, it would take a day at the motor vehicles office in person to get that benefit. And upper middle class car owners and upper class car owners went nuts saying, why are we doing this? Why can't we do this remotely? And the technology was instituted. I point out a few thousand people each year die in car accidents in New York. And to my knowledge, not a single person has died in a SNAP accident. And so you would think the state has even more interest in making it more difficult to get a driver's license than it does to get federally funded food benefits, and yet we do the reverse. So the technology is there. The pandemic proved that if there's a will, there's a way, and we just need to make sure that there's a will.
Let's go back to the senator for.
John,
Oh,
if
yeah.
I could just
Yeah,
comment
great.
on the technology that was used, especially for SNAP. So the state had to apply for a waiver from the federal government, and to extend that and continue to allow for applications via telephone, etc. We still had to apply for a waiver. Coincidentally, we just had to apply for give New York City the authorization to continue that by getting a waiver, and it's only for 6 months. It's not that it's going to be there. It's this, the federal government looks at it and says, okay, you can do X. And so waivers have to be applied for, and there's no guarantee that they will continue to extend the timeline of the waiver.
I
Got it.
get that at least as long as this present Secretary of Agriculture in office, I'm convinced that anything they are allowed to do under federal law, they will. There are some provisions not affecting older New Yorkers, for instance, senior SNAP benefits that do expire May 11th when the pandemic emergency goes away. But at least under this administration, they will do everything possible, I believe, to grant those waivers.
They are, and that's why we're fighting for things to be included in the Farm Bill. And it's not guaranteed, but we are fighting for that. Thank you.
And Senator, you've noted federal regulations state that information can only be shared with individuals or parties directly connected with the administration or enforcement of SNAP program. Maybe you already hit on that, but could you elaborate on that?
Right, and that's what Joel said, you know, that sometimes we interpret the regulations too broadly, but that's the way we were given. That's what we were told. You cannot just share the information. And so we're working with OTDA to see, you know, we're always, if someone says we are doing something that's not the letter of the law, this is what we're here for, to look at and see how do we change it so that we make, and the bottom line is, and I'm going to repeat it again, we are here to ensure as many New Yorkers as possible who qualify for benefits have those benefits and have easy access to it without having to jump through hurdles and hoops.
Well, to that point, I'll give you, sorry, one more question, Senator. This came up in the chat. Can you please speak more about the barriers that you, the Senator, hinted towards, you know, these federal obstacles? What is possible now and what is already done on this front to basically data match?
You know, it's something that we're looking into. You know, the governor has put forward her proposal. We have to look into it. We have to look at what is allowed and what waivers we have to apply for, because the bottom line, the federal guidelines is what guides us to what we can do. And for us to circumvent what the guideline says, we must apply for waivers. And so we're working with OTDA. As I said, Assemblymember Davila and I, we're having the conversations. We're going to be meeting with OTDA again. We ask them the questions. When questions are posed to us, we ask them what, why not? And based on what they give us, we also reach out to our federal partners, and that's what we're doing. And that's why, you know, when things were happening in for example, SNAP, the federal government doesn't allow you to replace the money. You know, you had to when someone's SNAP benefits were skimmed. And so all of those things, once we hear of it, we reach out to OTDA, we reach out to our federal government and find ways and how can we get it fixed. It's, you know, all of us would like to have solutions tomorrow. If we ask for there's an issue today, we would like to have a solution tomorrow. But we all know that's not how it works, because we're not the final authority on everything that we put forward.
Sure, understood. Let's go back to the Assemblymember Davila on this point.
Yes, I just wanted to add that you know, there's more ways than one to skin a cat. Okay. I believe that there's always a way that you can probably get information. Obviously, when you go to a hospital, what they give you is a form. If you want to release any information to a doctor or to another doctor or to your family members, you have to sign a consent to be able to do that. And as the conversation continues to go on, I'm thinking, well, why can't OTDA send this freedom of information kind of form to the seniors and let them opt into it? I know it takes the federal government and the state, but sometimes this takes a long time. As the senator said, it takes a really, really long time. In the interim, I'm getting like 30 seniors a day in my district office. We're doing the work on the ground, okay? And so, you know, it can be extremely overwhelming. I know it needs to happen, and it needs to happen now. Whatever it is that the senator and I can do to bring this together, and probably go to the governor, talk to her and say, listen, if you release the information, if you're asking, you know, for children and families to be able to release the information, then it should work the same way for the seniors. Because at one point or another, the seniors are very extremely vulnerable. And we're letting them sit there without the services that they need just because we don't know about it. Furthermore, I want to talk a little bit. I've been in the not-for-profit agency for over 27 years. I know how it works. It was called the Ridgewood Bushwick Senior Citizens Council, and now it's called Riseboro. But let's not get it wrong. We dealt with seniors since the early 90s, and we know the disparities that they face. Meals on Wheels is a great program. Yes. What is that program that picks them up to go to the doctors? Not everybody knows. And by the way, there are language barriers that we do not talk about. Okay, so they may be missing out on these services just because they do not understand the language. So let's get it together. Let's talk about these things. Let's put the pieces together, like Lori said. It's sort of like a puzzle, and let's see how far we can get with this. And if it takes multiple pieces of legislation to get it done, then that's what we're going to do. But we have to start somewhere.
Got it. I want to go to an audience question from Noel Serrano. How can we help? As a community-based nonprofit agency with case managers experienced in helping clients profiled by the panel, we find it challenging identifying those clients. Would a solution or method to access the data matching help? Weigh in on that.
I'd say we reached an agreement with the city that in the pandemic, they had a huge new program to deliver meals to people shut into the pandemic. And for all our criticism of government's slow and unwieldy, and when Catherine Garcia was the food czar of New York City, she was responsible for this, along with Kate McKenzie, the food policy coordinator. And they delivered something like millions of meals a week. It's just gigantic. And they matched that list versus the city's list of who was getting stamps, and then took off the people who were getting food stamps, and then shared a list. We found a legally appropriate way for them to do so, and then we were able to contact those folks and say, do you want to help getting people getting SNAP? So we knew they were people who needed food and weren't getting SNAP already. We could do some quick screens on our own to determine, based on immigration status and income, whether they would be eligible for SNAP. So that's one just example of how government can work quickly and intelligently.
I think also we have to, really bring our senior centers more as partners and to get the information out. During the pandemic, that's what we did when the senior centers had to be closed. We knew who their membership was, and that's how we communicated the information to the seniors through the senior centers. We got them to, we walked them through applying for the home delivery meals through 311. We walked them through all of those processes. We had the senior center directors do a lot of it. So if we can get if we could engage our senior center partners more, I think we'll be able to reach more seniors than we're currently reaching.
I did want to just popped in my head, at least at the federal level, I don't know about the state level. Do you ever get the sense or the concern that some of these programs that provide benefits, they are intentionally made to be onerous to limit the taxpayer money going out? Anyone want to weigh in on that kind of broader dynamic, if that's the case in your view? Senator, I saw you nodding.
I'm going to punt that to Joel.
Well, I would say yes. And I've written 2 books, and the first one on hunger in America goes into this in depth. The program was designed at the federal level by Southern segregationists who purposely wanted to keep food away from non-white people. That's not a crazy leftist woke claim. It's backed up fully, historical record. In fact, Jamie Whitten, who was the chair of the Agriculture Appropriations Committee for decades, basically said if we feed the N-word, he was a segregationist from Mississippi, a Democrat at the time, said if we feed the N-word, they won't work. And every other USDA program of substance is run directly by the federal government. Farm programs are run by the federal government. Rural development programs are run by the federal government. Forest Service programs are run by the federal government with the same federal guidelines and forms everywhere in the country. The only programs that are given to states to run are the poor people's programs, the food programs, and that was specifically designed to make it difficult to keep food away from low-income people. So there's no question of that, and there's no question that there's a racial aspect to that. Even though, farmers sometimes, or farm operations, to be more precise, get millions and millions of dollars of farm subsidies. And, I know we're not talking about this today, but there's a major national debate now over work requirements, additional work requirements for SNAP. No debate over whether people get millions of dollars for land they own that gets farm subsidies would have work requirements, but people are obsessed with the few SNAP recipients who are unemployed getting this while they're unemployed. So absolutely, yes, it was purposely designed to be difficult for people to get.
Okay. And then apart from data matching, I think we've hit on this here and there during the discussion. Are there efforts or ways that state government can just streamline processes, not have it be, someone has to call back and then someone has to be sitting by their phone, or just making websites more user-friendly, just making it, streamlining processes? Is there room for improvement on that front? Are there areas, agencies, governmental bodies that are doing that well, that have could be models for improvement here?
If it's okay if I jump in here.
Yeah.
Now, what I would say is, this is incremental. Back to what Lori was saying, and the assembly member and the senator reinforced that this is a work in progress. It's a continuum. So, yes, we're looking at data matching, but I think all of us have said in one way or another, we are looking for a universal entry point, long-term, with no wrong door. I think the senator kind of said that in different words. We want people, whatever door they walk into, if they walk into the SNAP door, if they walk into the Medicare savings door, if they walk into the WIC door, whatever door they walk into, not TANF funds, whatever door they walk into, immediately someone should say, do you want me to check you for everything? That's if we're still in this old-fashioned method of not getting our technology up to speed. But the real goal is get our technology up to speed. Somebody puts in one application, and I think as Joel said before, so many of these benefits have exactly the same or almost exactly the same eligibility. So why are we making people jump through hoops? And Assemblymember, I really appreciate what you said, because the immigrant, I was giving the data on poverty and the increase in 65 plus, but the data on immigration, people who were born out of this country, which goes right back to your issue about the, bilingual or maybe not bilingual, that's a big part of this. So if people came in once and the technology was ready to take it in different, in different languages, and where would we be now? We'd be in a whole different place. So yeah, this is the beginning. I think that the Parker-Solage bill is the first step, because we'll get that first step of data matching. The second step is to grab those benefits to the federal government, the $3 federal benefits that we're talking about here, which is SNAP, Medicare Savings Program, and HEAP, LIHEAP, which is the utility. Those are 3 programs that are federal dollars, and New York State is leaving those federal dollars on the table. So that's the next step in data matching. And then our long shot, which is, we're coming there, it's when, because it is 2023, let's just get everything online so the computers talk to one another. And yes, it's absolutely challenging. It's challenging because New York is working with computer programs that are over 40 years old. Over 40 years old. It just like makes your mind like, what? And we know the administration is working really hard to try to overcome and bring in this new technology. But again, if you have a will about this, and back to Assembly members saying where there's a will, there's a way, you know, we can get this done if it's prioritized. Technology is being changed every single day in New York State government. Prioritize this. Let's get this done now.
Got it. Anyone else want to weigh in on that? Lori? Okay.
Yeah, thank you, John. And, you know, again, just to flag in my world is the utilities. We are very lucky. We have an energy affordability program working group through the Department of Public Service. And, you know, it's a great venue to watch implementation and look for things because things always come up, right? We're all here. We want to create the strongest, most efficient, most successful programs through data match, but things will happen. And so even for instance, right now, we have some limited data matching with HEAP. Right? But not everyone applies for HEAP. Not everyone gets HEAP. Some people get denied. And we believe that the energy affordability program is under-enrolled by about 1.1 million households. So we're having discussions. And for instance, when we talk about things like SNAP and what can we do, you know, I want to thank OTDA. They actually came up with the idea of sending out a letter. So because they know, they are like, we know who our SNAP participants are, we'll send a letter right now. And they did. And then groups like us are on the ground and we've had people come in and they're like, can you teach me how to read my bill, Lori? I got this letter. Do you know what this means? And we're like, you are on SNAP. We can now enroll you in the energy affordability program. So even right now, while we're all working to make things better, there's a system for the utilities in place and we're all trying, right? We're like, okay, we'll work with what we have now, but we can take it to that next level. We can codify it. We can work with the legislature to make this a priority, work with the governor to, you know, just make this easier for people. So they'll be saving that money every single month off their energy bills. So it's good. There's momentum that's definitely been growing. But I feel like now is the time, right? We're coming out of the pandemic. We're dealing with energy costs rising. We're dealing with inflation and food prices, and all that is happening at the same time. So we're excited to be here at this very point in time.
Great, thank you. The senator has to leave for another commitment. Thank you, Senator Persaud, for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
I guess one last question I have, you know, in some ways this seems to be, it just shows like this stereotype of government. Government is inefficient. Government can't get things done quickly. Government is burdensome. Is there is part of the solution outsourcing more, privatizing more, bringing in, you know, private sector companies who can improve the technological infrastructure? Any thoughts on that line of reasoning?
That for me or?
Yeah, for the US.
No, absolutely. Well, first off, it's no secret that the workforce that we're dealing with right now needs to improve. And yes, we have CBOs that do this work and whatever have you. But at the same token, yes, government can be cumbersome. It could be very, very slow. And I could show you, I have over maybe 300 pieces of legislation that everybody wants to pass at the same time. It's just the way it works. And I don't know if that will ever change. I believe that the speaker is putting in new incentives so that people can get their bills passed a lot faster. But then there's another piece to it, programming counsel. We need the attorneys to do the research and be able to put it all together for us. So yeah, it's a tough field, but I don't think it's impossible. I think what we need to do is prioritize what's important right now. For example, my office sees over 1,000 seniors, 1,000 seniors. Lori can talk about this because she was part of this. From the beginning of February to the end of March, we are doing two applications called the IT 214, IT 210. That is extra money that the seniors that are on SSI or anyone under $18,000 a year can apply for, that is receiving social services. People don't know this, but we do it because we want to make sure. So would that make my life a lot easier or the other members' life easier? Absolutely. Let's get this database going. Let's just do it. Let's find a way to get it done.
Got it. Thank you. And we have about 3 minutes left. I think I'll just give everyone about 30 seconds for any final thoughts, any last points you wanted to squeeze in quick. And Assembly Member, let's go to you first, briefly.
Closing remarks?
Yeah, any final point you want to make or
I
wrap
just
things
want to
up?
say thank you. I believe that this conversation is right up my alley. And now I have my marching orders and I plan to go and do all the research that I can and talk with our senator to be able to come up with ideas on how to get this done. I want to thank you for enlightening me and thank you to all the panelists and thank you to you, John and David, for allowing me to be here today.
Great. Joel, if you have any quick final thoughts?
Just say that the city of New York is failing to process SNAP benefits within 30 days in more than 50% of the time. There's a lawsuit against them, on this and so many other areas. They could do so much better if they better use technology.
Great. Thank you, Joel. Lori, final thoughts?
Thanks again for having us. We've never seen so many discussions where energy affordability has been brought up, and it's a really crucial part of everything. You can't have a safe home without energy, water, telecom, and we all know that better than ever now after the pandemic. So Hope is excited to be part of these conversations, and thanks for having us.
Great. Thank you, Lori. And let's go to Beth Scheiken-Rothbard.
Thank you, John. I would just, echo what the Assembly member said, that this, data matching can help not just the consumers and the beneficiaries. It helps a lot of people that are involved in this, all the stakeholders, the constituents' offices that are, having, constituents come into the door so frequently, the local departments of social services that are processing multiple applications. And, we work closely with the Department of Health, who have been supportive and, follow along with these suggestions that we make. And it just seems that, this data matching could really benefit people in getting, more people accessing the benefits, as well as allowing other people, CBOs, constituents' offices to do a lot more with their time if we could, simplify these processes. So thank you for having me here today. And thank you all for the discussion.
Thank you, Beth. And lastly, let's go to Beth Finkel.
I'm going to go back to David's original question, which is why are we leaving $4.4 billion out there untapped for New York State, for our economy and for individual households? Beth raised that $7,000 number. That's $7,000 back to an individual. It's a huge difference in lifestyle. It's a huge difference in dignity. And that's what I want to just hit again. Let's get that $7,000 back in the pockets of the people who really need it. It'll help them. It'll help their community. It'll help New York State.
Great. Thank you, Beth. Thank you to all of the panelists for a fantastic discussion. Thank you to ARP New York as our sponsor. And thank you to everyone who tuned in today. This concludes our program.